What's up, Lorcana players? Havry here, and welcome to part 3? 4? 4. Part 4 of my Rise of the Floodborn card review series. We got a ton of new cards that were revealed since my last review, so let's get right to it. To start us off, we have a brand new action card. Help me! Help! I'm Stuck is a 1-ink action that just simply reads, chosen exerted character can't ready at the start of their next turn. This card is the essence of what I love about card games like Lorcana. They take well-known scenarios of some of our favorite movies and transfer said scenarios perfectly into card form to not only fit thematically, but actually serve a purpose to the game itself. It's just the soul of the game, and I absolutely adore cards like these. With that said though, this card kinda Okay, I'm being too harsh. The problem with this card is that it doesn't leave enough of an impact for what a deck slot should leave. Before you put a card into your deck, you should stop and think for a moment. Will this card justify its inclusion over other cards? Unfortunately, I just don't think that I'm Stuck does that. While it's nice to have a cheap way to freeze opponents' characters, I think Elsa just simply does it a little bit better. On top of only being able to choose one specific card in one specific circumstance, I'm Stuck just doesn't pack much of a punch to excite me. Simply exerting one character and not allowing them to move is just delaying when you could just be challenging them, you could be banishing them. All this card does is slow down your opponent when you should be trying to stop your opponent. I'm Stuck just leaves such little impact in the game-to-game play that you just don't really need a reason to run I'm Stuck over other cards that'll simply get rid of your opponent's cards faster. For that reason alone, I just don't think I'm Stuck is going to be played in a ton of decks, but maybe there'll be an opportunity that you'll want to stop your opponent's Aladdin or your opponent's Reckless cards from attacking your guys over and over again. But at that point, why wouldn't you just run a card that does damage, or a card that challenges opponents' cards? It just seems like such a waste of a deck slot that you'd probably be better off running literally anything else. Just stay home, Pooh Bear. From one Winnie the Pooh action to another, we have Bounce. Bounce is a 2-ink uninkable action that reads as the following. Return chosen character of yours to your hand to return another chosen character to their player's hand. I'm happy to say that it's not all doom and gloom for the Winnie the Pooh franchise because I really love the idea behind this card. I think what would normally be a downside from most decks, that being forced to return a character to your hand, won't be too much of a downside compared to most characters your opponent would have in play. It's even better since you get to pick which 2 cards get bounced, your opponent's and yours. You could, for example, bounce your Flynn Rider back to your hand, but bounce your opponent's Mufasa that they played last turn, which is a huge tempo shift. My only concern with this card is the fact that it's uninkable, which is a huge deal actually. Typically, cards that are uninkable have to have a crazy effect to justify it not being able to be used as ink, and while I don't think Bounce automatically fulfills this requirement, I think it definitely has the potential to. As more cards get revealed, I can see more and more cards being worthy of a bounce, as we've already seen some strong cards revealed that you'd welcome an extra turn to find an answer to. One last small use of this card I forgot to mention is that you can sort of use it as a pseudo heal. You could, for example, bounce one of your injured cards and return them back to your board with full health. While of course you'd have to pay the ink cost again, it's still a small piece of information worth noting. And I think it could be used for in some niche situations. So yeah, overall I think Bounce has a lot of potential, but it definitely needs to be in your hand at the right time in order for it to be useful. Otherwise it's just an uninkable card in your hand with no use for its effect. It's an inconsistent card that has potential for big payoffs, and I'm excited to see what players who are brave enough to take that risk do with this card. Onto a character so important to Disney's history he doesn't even have a name. We have the Prince. Disney may have given us a prince, but in front of me, I see nothing but a king. And the reason I say that is because this card is good. So the Prince is an inkable 3-ink character with 1 attack, 3 health, and quest for 2. It has bodyguard and resist 1. So, I have bad news to the Hercules fans out there, but your favorite boy has already been power crept out of the game. So, what makes this card better than Hercules exactly? Well, it's thanks to the new keyword added in this expansion, resist. Allowing your bodyguard to actually, well, guard bodies more effectively is extremely powerful. On top of that, but when you do exert it, which will likely be by questing, you'll quest for 2 instead of 1. Hercules never saw that much play to begin with, even in your typical Protect the Bell decks you didn't even really see Herc. But I think this card will be an auto-include in that deck at least. I also think it'll see a lot of play in Amber Steel aggro decks because it's not only protecting your smaller questers, but it also quests for 2 on its own, which is pretty solid. The only thing that's worse about this card objectively than Herc is the fact that it only has 1 attack instead of 3, but that honestly doesn't even really matter because Steel already has a lot of ways to remove cards. You didn't really want to throw your bodyguard at anything anyways when you could preserve its health instead. So yeah, I'm definitely excited for the Prince as your residential Steel Sapphire enjoyer, and while I don't think he's an auto-include in every Steel deck, he's definitely a really strong card, and if he's in the right deck, he'll be an invaluable asset. Very excited for this one. Next up, we have the latest card to be revealed as the time of writing this, Mulan. I feel like this card and Raya were made to compete in the biggest mid-off of all time. Like, Mulan is one of those cards where I honestly have a hard time understanding why it was even printed this way. This card is so bad I don't think it'll even be used in friendly decks. To articulate how terrible this card is, let's compare it to another Ruby Rush card, Maui. Side by side, these cards are similar on paper, and Maui isn't too bad, so what makes this card so awful? Well, the main issue is the stat comparison for the cost. Only paying 1 ink more for 2-1 worth of stats is way more worthy of your deck slot. On top of that, Maui has the flexibility of being inkable, while Mulan doesn't. Why? Why is Mulan uninkable? Did they see this card and think it was that strong to like, oh, we can't let this card be inkable, it'll break the metagame? And honestly, that's the kicker for me. The fact that you can't ink an already mediocre card is what makes this card extra terrible. This is usually the part where I'd bring up a scenario where you could use Mulan, but I can't think of a single use, and even including one in your deck over literally any other card is a bad idea. It's such a tragic waste of such beautiful art too. It's everyone's favorite naggy mom friend, Cogsworth. I'm choosing to review both versions of the new Cogsworth cards at the same time, mostly because I don't have a lot to say about Talking Clock. Its effect, which allows your Reckless cards to quest for 1 basically, allows for some alternative pressure for your Reckless cards, but as of right now, there just aren't that many Reckless cards in the game, and there aren't even any Reckless cards in Sapphire. I'm sure this will change, but even with that, this effect is just fine. It won't break the metagame or anything, but hey, it's a 2-ink 2-3, and that's fine, I guess. Anyways, as your residential Sapphire enjoyer, I am excited as hell for Cogsworth Grandfather Clock. So Cogsworth Grandfather Clock is a 5-ink inkable 2/5 that quests for 2, shift 3, it has ward, and its effect gives your entire board resist 1. This card has a lot of really good things going for it. If you shift it out, its stats are amazing for the cost, and even if you don't, it's not too bad if you're forced to play it on its own. The fact that it has ward means that it'll be quite annoying to remove, especially if you choose not to quest with it, and its passive giving all of your other cards resist is so huge. Your low health cards just get inherently better when Cogsworth is on the board, and honestly, even in your deck, you have become Steel's worst nightmare. Unless they're pairing themselves with a color with some form of hard removal, it's going to be nearly impossible for Steel players to play effectively against this card. I brought this point up in my last video, but to reiterate, pairing this with Aurora Dreaming Guardian is such a dream combo. No pun intended. Oh fuck. Giving all your other creatures +1 resist and ward means that your opponent better be running Be Prepared, or you've practically won the game by that point. I honestly think that this card will allow for tons of new archetypes to thrive in the meta, like Sapphire Amethyst and Sapphire Amber. It's such an amazing strong card that has so many uses that I'm really excited to see how everybody will utilize it. I'm personally excited to try him out in a Sapphire Emerald deck that focuses on protecting your board and allowing your annoying Emerald cards to quest for big numbers. So yeah, I think Cogsworth will see a lot of competitive play and may just be one of the best cards in the set. And that's all the cards I have to talk about today.
Yes, I know I didn't talk about the new Flim Rider, but he's literally so boring that I have nothing to say.
While I am aware of the promotional kit leaks that appeared a while ago, I just don't want to talk about cards that aren't officially revealed yet at this point. So anyways, as always, leave a like if you've enjoyed the video and subscribe if you want more Lorcana content. Take care.